our studios in the heart of Silicon Valley, Palo Alto, California. This is a CUBE Conversation.
Hello everyone, welcome to this special CUBE Conversation here in Palo Alto studios for theCUBE. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. We're here with special guest Arijit Mukherji, who's the CTO of SignalFx, hot startup that's now growing very, very fast in this cloud native world. Arijit, great to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Great to see you too again, John.
So cloud growth is changing the landscape of the enterprise. We're seeing it obviously as, it's no real surprise. Cloud 1.0 has happened, public cloud. Cloud 2.0, as we're calling it, is changing the game. We're seeing enterprise cloud really the focus. You're seeing cloud native really move the needle. Kubernetes has kind of created that abstraction, kind of standard, de facto standard, if you will, people getting around. So you're seeing the game changing from how apps are built,
right,
to security and everything in between. So a new set of services, web services at scale, has certainly changed the game. You guys are in the middle of this with monitoring and observability, and I want you to help us understand the core problem enterprises are having today, because they know it's coming, they know it's here, they got investments out there, the cloud has changed the game for the enterprise. What's the problem?
Yes, you're absolutely right, John. So everybody's moving to the sort of the new way of doing things, right? So monoliths are gone, microservices are in, containers are in, and you kind of have to do that because if you don't do that, you're going to get lapped, right, by the competition. And so the challenge right now is how do you make that successful? And the challenge there is these new environments are much, much more complex, as you mentioned. And the question is, unless you understand how these systems behave, how will you be able to run them successfully? So the challenge as far as monitoring and observability is concerned is, I think it's critical that it be there for you to be able to sort of do this cloud transformation successfully, but it's a far more complex and hard challenge than it used to be.
We've seen the evolution, and we've been covering it for 10 years. It's the 10th year of theCUBE. We'll be celebrating that at VMworld this year. You've seen wave one, lift and shift, do some basic stuff, not a lot of heavy lifting, no tinkering with some of the tech in there. Monitoring's great, and then you got, re-architect. Let's get some cloud native, let's do some Kubernetes. And then the next path is this complete microservices. This is what everyone's really excited about.
That's right.
This is where the complexity is. So I got to ask you, that changes the notion of monitoring and observability. So given that this shift is happening, re-architecting to full microservices, what is observability in that equation?
Right, so there's a very interesting difference between, I think, monitoring and observability that I think I would like to touch upon here. So back in the days of the monolith, it was what we call classic monitoring. Monitoring is about looking at things, looking for things that you know might happen. So for example, if I know my server might fall down, I may run a probe to make sure that it's up or not, right? But when you move to this new world, I mean, if you look at any cloud native environment with all the microservices and containers, for example, Amazon's S3 has 120 different microservices powering it, behind it. Now, if you were to go and ask an engineer, like what is the map or how are the data flow happening in that environment, I guarantee you no one person can probably do that well. So then monitoring doesn't work because I don't even know what to look for. So what's important is I be able to gather telemetry, have the information available so that the unknowns, the kind of things that I'm not expecting because it's just too complex or just anticipated, like that data will allow us to figure out what went wrong. So observability is about gathering telemetry and information so that we can deal with that complexity, understand problems as they behave, because the world is no longer simple anymore.
So, the observability is just monitoring in a dynamic environment, what you're saying. Because monitoring used to be simple. You know what's going on, static routes, set policy, get some alarms, network management, basic stuff.
Exactly, like Nagios checks and whatnot.
Now you're saying there's unknowns happening, unexpected things going on around the services. What would that be as an example?
Yeah, so for example, again, with microservices, why are we doing it? Because we want smaller teams to be able to innovate quicker, faster, right? So instead of my monolith, let's say I have whatever, SignalFx has 50 different microservices powering it. Now, each of these teams, they are deploying software on their own because the whole idea of Cloud 2.0 is that we are able to move faster. So what that means is individual chunks of my overall service are adapting, are changing over time, are evolving. And so that's the complexity. Like it's actually a changing landscape. Like my map does not stay the same on an ongoing basis. That is fundamentally a big challenge. The other challenge that I would mention too is that how ephemeral things are getting. So all these microservices that are themselves adapting, they're also being deployed in containers and by Kubernetes, where these containers, they keep popping up and down all the time. Like even the infrastructure on which we are running is extremely dynamic, right? Containers, Lambda, sort of serverless is another great example of that. So it's a very shifting sands is what we are standing on in some sense. Right?
You know, and a lot of times we cover a lot of real time and you can't just throw it in logs, you got to have that in there. This begs the question, okay, so I get the complexity. I'm a customer or I'm someone who wants to really go down this observability track with you. Why is it important? What's in it for me?
So in the end, without it, how will you succeed? So it's almost like, will a pilot with blinders on, will he be able to fly an aircraft? The answer is no. Similarly, I mean, we may want to move to this modern, awesome environment which lets us move fast, but unless you have visibility into it, unless you can find when problems are happening, unless you can, when those problems happen, be able to find the root cause and remediate them quickly, you're not really going to be successful. And so that's really why observability is important, because it allows us to not only sort of run this well, but it also allows us to understand the user experience. Because in the end, we are all service providers, we have users, right? And so understand what the user's experience is like. So that's important. Understand the key business metrics. If you look at a lot of the talk track that's been going around in the circuit around, you know, error budgets and SLIs and SLOs, which are sort of important things. The whole idea is that we want to measure and monitor what's important to the business, to the user, and that's kind of what observability allows us to get.
You know, gone are the days of a few application servers on a database.
That's right.
So you know, on the why is it important, I got to follow up with saying from an operations perspective, what is the new reality, okay? Because we know there's going to be a lot of databases out there and a lot of different applications. You mentioned some of the containerization, dynamic microservices. But what's the impact and what's the importance to the operations side of the equation with observability?
So what's happening now is, you know, again, back in the monolith days, the operators, the IT staff who were running those infrastructure, they were the ones who would implement monitoring, right? But if you see the way now these environments are structured, these organizations are structured, it's the developers who are building tools, they are the ones who are also running them. And in order for an organization to be able to move fast, they need to give powerful tools to their developers to do their job, and because there is no one person who knows the right way of doing things. So it's really about sort of democratizing that capability. So you will need to give powerful observability tools to the developers, the operators who are also the new operators, to sort of make with it what they will, in the sense that they are the ones who best understand the meaning of the data that's being collected, because you know it's all very specific to individual microservices. So that's really a powerful observability platform, is one that allows you to easily collect a lot of information, allows you to analyze, visualize it, and sort of treat it in a way to sort of, it helps you answer the questions you want to answer.
So you're saying that, okay, ops gets monitoring and observability, but a new persona user is a developer.
That is correct.
And what do they care about? Do they just want it to be abstracted away? They don't really probably wake up and say, hey, I can't wait to look at observability. So is it more of a use? So tell about the developer dynamic, because this is, seems like a new trend.
Yes, it totally is. So things are becoming less about black box testing and more about sort of observability being an end-to-end process. So let me tell you what I mean. So back in the day, let's say I deployed a monolith, it was a Java server. There were standard ways to check them as a black box. You know, I could run probes, etc., to run a health check endpoint and whatnot. Life was great. But now, that's obviously not good enough, because as I mentioned, because of interactions, because of complexity, a black box testing doesn't even work, because as I said, the whole environment is very dynamic. So what the pattern now is that, as I said, observability is an end-to-end process, in the sense that developers care about observability when they're writing the software. It is not an afterthought anymore. So as I'm writing, as I'm developing software, I think about, well, when this thing goes out into the wild, how will I monitor it? What are the things that I care about as a developer, because I understand the system the best. And so you instrument, you build systems for observability is, I think, a big change that's happening. And once that happens, then you're the one person who also is able to best read that data.
So while they're developing, they get these benefits inherently right there on the spot.
That is
this
correct.
is kind of consistent with the live programming trend that's really popular in some languages, rather than doing all the debugging, post-event, coming back to it. So making it very efficient seems to be a use case.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's one of the things I like to talk about a lot, actually, is observability, what is it for? Is it just for telling me when my production is not working well? The answer is no. Even when I'm developing, I may want to know, well, did I have a performance regression? How do I know that the code that I wrote is good? So I use, again, the same telemetry that I'm going to use later, even during the development process, to make sure that the code that I wrote works well. We do the same thing during deployment. Again, I deployed a version or a canary or a few of them. Are they running well, right? So it is not just about what's happening in production. It's about end-to-end, from development, deployment, up to production.
And that's what developers want. They want it in the moment, right when they're coding, taken care of.
It's instant gratification, like everybody else wants.
And more efficient. They know it's going to break, they know the consequences, they can deal with it.
Yes.
This is awesome. So the next question I have for you is, how do you implement observability?
That's a great question. So you can think of it sort of in two ways. One is the means through which you get it. So you get observability through metrics, through logs, through traces, through probes, etc. That's one way. Another one is, I think I alluded to a little bit earlier, is what are your goals? Because everybody's goals are different, right? And if you think of it in that sense, then the sort of the purpose of observability are a few. A, is it allowing your teams to move faster? So I spoke about some of the process just about earlier. Are they able to deploy code with confidence faster? When problems happen, how quickly are we able to then triage them? So the whole incident review process, that's kind of important. Observability better help me with that. The user experience is also something very important. As I mentioned, observability is going sort of more up the stack, so to speak. And so being able to understand what the user experience is very important. Similarly, understanding from the business point of view, what does the business care about? For example, when I had that outage, how much loss did I have? How many eyeballs did I miss on my site? So I think one way to think about it is you need to have good processes, good tools. At the same time, you need to be clear about what your goals are and make sure that sort of whatever you're implementing sort of furthers those to some extent.
I'd like to play a little CUBE game here with you and walk through the observability myths and reality.
Sure.
I'll say the myth and you can tell me the reality. Myth number one, having observability reduces incidents.
No. Actually, it might increase it. Let me put it that way. I'll tell you why. So it's almost like, in a human, I may be measuring someone's temperature or pulse rate like every day. Does that make the person less or more prone to have problems? Chances are it's going to be the same. I might actually find things that I was not aware of, right? So in that sense, just having observability does not necessarily change anything about the process. But what it will do, though, is when a problem does happen, I have this treasure trove of data which I can then use to quickly isolate the problem. So what it does is it shrinks the outage time, which is in the end what's very, very important. So while it may not reduce your outages, it will definitely make them better from the end user point of view.
Second myth, buying a tool means you have observability.
No.
Reality.
Having a doctor doesn't mean I am healthy, in the sense that I think a tool is very important. It's a very, very important step. But the question is, how well adopted is the tool? What kind of data am I sending to the tool? How are the users, my engineers, how well versed are they in using it, right? And so there's a lot of other stuff associated with it. So tool selection is very important, but I think adoption and making it a success within the organization is also very, very important.
Okay, final myth, observability is free or cheap?
I wish. So,
well, you guys are a for-profit company.
That's exactly right. No, I think I really feel that observability is almost like it's an associated function. As I mentioned earlier, if I'm going to be successful flying this plane, I need commensurate amount of other services that sort of help me make that successful. So in a way, one way to think about it is, it scales up as complex and as large as your environment gets, and justifiably so, because there's various other reasons too, because we're adopting new technologies all the time. So tools are getting just more and more complicated. My requirements are getting more complicated. And then another thing I would add is the quality of my service, like the level, the quality of service that I provide, the higher bar I want, I probably am spending more on observability. But it's a justified cost. So I think it's not a fixed cost, obviously. It grows with your complexity and the kind of quality that you want to provide.
Well, there's also, I mean, I think the observability challenge with the complexity is there's a hidden cost that if you're not observing the right areas,
yes,
the cost of not having that visibility as a blind spot could have business benefits, I mean not benefits, but consequences in the sense of outages, security. I mean there's a lot of different things that you got to have the observation space being enterprise.
You totally have to do that. It's actually one thing we like to say is that, like instrument first, ask questions later. Now coming from a for-profit vendor, it may sound sort of self-serving, but it's kind of not so too, in the sense that, I mean, hindsight is 20/20. If I'm stuck in a bad situation, I have no telemetry to sort of fall back on, then where do I go with it? So I think we should be more conservative and sort of try and instrument the things that we think might be applicable, the kind of questions I may want to ask, when a rainy day comes, right? I think you're absolutely right. So it has to be something, it's a philosophy that developers, engineers should sort of imbibe, and they should then practice it as part of their sort of own workflows.
I want to get into where companies should invest in observability, but I want to just throw a wild card question at you, which is, when you look at the big data space, even going back 10 years ago to now, cloud, there's always been this argument about tool versus platform. Anything that's been data centric tend to be platform like conversations, not a tool. A tool can be like, okay, it does a thing, does it really well, a hammer, everything's a nail, what's a hammer? But there's more dynamic range required, because you're talking about observation space, you're talking about cloud, horizontally scalable, hybrid on premises.
That's right.
So again, it kind of feels like a platform technical challenge.
You're absolutely right. So I think two factors at play, if you ask my opinion. One is, if you are interested in monitoring, a tool is perfect, right? Because you kind of know what you want. If a tool does that well, then more power to it. But if you don't know what you want, if you are basically collecting stuff and you're depending on it as a way to answer questions on the unknown unknowns, as charity majors like to say, then you do need a platform, because that platform needs to be sort of inclusive. It must have data of different types all be able to come into it. It's not really meant for a specific purpose, it's meant to be a generic tool. So we do see this trend in the industry towards more sort of a platform approach to this. Obviously they will have tool-like capabilities because they're answering sort of particular use cases, etc. But the underlying platform, the more powerful it is, I think the better it is in the long run.
Yeah, and the argument there could be, if it's an enabling platform, you can create abstraction layers for visualization or APIs, other services.
That is exactly right, yes.
Okay, so now I'm interested, I want to get started. How do I invest in good observability? I'm crossing the chasm, I'm going to full microservices, I've done a re-architect, my team has got cultural buy-in, we're hiring, we're building our own stack, we're going to have on-premises, we're going to be in the cloud, in some cases fully cloud. What do I do? What do I invest? What's my playbook?
Sure, so I think we talked about the first one a little bit. So you have to choose the right tool. And the right tool, in my opinion, is not the one that does the best job now, when maybe I'm small, I'm not fully there yet. We have to think about what's the right tool or the right platform for where I do want to go. Now that may be commercial, that may be open source, that's not the point, but the point is that we need to have a very considered thought about what is it that we're betting the farm on, right? So that's number one. But that's not good enough. So as I mentioned, we need to make sure that there is usage and understanding of the tool within the organization. So a big part of it is just around the practice and the culture of observability within the organization. So for example, good habits like, every time you have an incident, you speak about these are the things that we measured. This is how we used our observability tool. Here are the dashboards that we depended on. Sort of reinforcing those concepts over and over again, so that those who are on board, they're obviously doing it right. Those who are not, they see the value and they start sort of using those good practices. That's kind of very important. The third thing I would say is start moving towards more higher level monitoring, observability. So measure the user experience, measure what's important to the business, stuff like that are important. The fourth area that's sort of very, very key is around sort of the whole incident management process. This is actually a very active topic, of a lot of discussion going on out there right now. Is, it's great that I have this great tool, I have all this telemetry, I found there was a problem, but when the incident happened, there are a lot of, again, good practices. This is part of the whole culture and process of observability. Is how do we make that process smooth and standardized and sort of become more efficient at it, right? And let's say you were to do that, the final sort of end goal is, as we like to call, is a self-running or self-automated cloud, where do we really need humans in all of this? How can we sort of run remediation in a more and more automated fashion, at least for the stuff that maybe does not require a human intelligence, right? Actually, you will find that 80–90% of issues probably don't, if you think hard about it, don't require a human. So I think this move towards automation is also another sort of very fantastic trend. I've seen that being very successful in past some of my old companies, and I think that's going to be a trend in the
for
industry.
known processes, people and process, that's where the problems come. Bad process or code and people mistakes, you can automate that. Mundane tasks or undifferentiated kind of heavy lifting.
That's exactly right, because there was this interesting study done that was commissioned by Stripe, where they found that among the CXOs, they value engineers and developers more than money, because getting them, because they're such a scarce resource. So if you do get them, you probably don't want them to sort of run and do mundane things. That's not what you hired them for. So you want them to do the work of the business, and the more you can isolate them from sort of the mundane and have automation come into play, I think it's just
well, they're investing more from the CISOs and the CIOs we talk to.
Right.
There's more investments in-house now for real development, real software development, real projects, and those top talent, they want to work on the toughest problems.
That's why we're moving to a SaaS future, right? Because all the functions that are not core to my business, I want to farm off and have.
So you got me sold on observability. I'm a big believer in observation space, and I certainly think cloud is a horizontally scalable, elastic resource, and certainly if the Kubernetes trends with service meshes and all the stuff going on, Kubeflow and a bunch of other things, more and more services are going to be very dynamic. So you're going to have a lot of unknown and unusual patterns.
That's right.
That's just the way the internet works now. So you have me sold on that. Now I need to get my team to the next level. They bought into DevOps. How do I take the temperature of where our IQ is in the life cycle of observability? Because I got to know where I am. Is there a way I can track my maturity or progress?
Yes, that's a very topical question, because I go out and I meet a lot of prospects and customers as part of my job. And a lot of times, because we are sort of in the leading edge, they will ask us, they look to us to tell them, like, are we doing it right, or how did you guys do it? So just so that, share information, how can we get better? So as part of that, we actually, at SignalFx, we actually built a maturity model. It's a way for us to sort of evaluate ourselves across various dimensions to see how well are we doing. Not only, it's not just a score, it's also about how well are we doing, but how can we improve? Like if we wanted to go to the next level of maturity, for example, like what are some of the things that we can do? And it spans multiple dimensions. It starts with how are we even collecting data, right? How easy is it, in other words, for somebody starting a new service or using a new software to get to the business of observability? That's kind of important. You got the data, how well am I able to visualize it? Because effective visualization is, as you can understand, very important. The next part comes with alerting. So, well, things are running, I know how they're going. How well can I detect when problems are happening? How soon can I detect when problems are happening? What kind of items can I monitor? Do I monitor the low-level things, or can I monitor the higher-level constructs? When the problem happened, let's talk about remediation. How quickly can I triage the problem to find out where it was? What kind of tools and slice and dice capabilities do I have? That's an important part of it. Let's say I did it. After that comes things like remediation. So, I found the problem. How well can I remediate? So we talked about automation. So there's multiple different categories where we talk about, what we've seen in the field in terms of what people are doing, as well as what some of the best practices are. So you're going to make this tool available to customers? Yes, we have. It's actually available on our website. And if you come to our website, you'll be able to sort of run the assessment as well as sort of see all of it yourself. Well, we've been following you guys since you launched. Got a great management team, great technical chops. We've covered that. And this observability is a real trend as it moves into more complexities we talked about. Most customers that are getting into this are trying to sift this from the signal from the noise and trying to decide who's the leader and who's not. So how would you describe what a leader in enterprise observability looks like from a supplier standpoint? You guys are one, you want to be the leader, you're the market leader. Right. What does a leader look like from a customer standpoint? What are the things that have to be in place? What are the table stakes to be that leader? Sure, that's a great question. Yeah, so we did build SignalFx to be a leader in this space, frankly. And there's a lot of different aspects that goes behind like what creates a good supplier in this space. One is, I think you have to be open and flexible. Like you have to be, it's a platform play. You better be able to collect data from all the systems that are out there. The quality of the integrations is very important. Another big thing we're finding is scale. A lot of these systems might not work when you move to sort of large numbers. And the problem that we are seeing is, while I may have 100 servers, I may be running 10,000 containers in those 100 servers. So now everybody is a scaled player, right? So the question is, your platform, will it be able to handle the complexity and the load? So that's an important one. Analytics, as we mentioned, is another very, very important capability. I like to say that, the ability to do analytics is not just good enough. How easy is it to use? Like, are your developers, engineers, are they even using it? So the ease and the capability of analytics is important, because that's kind of what allows us to measure those KPIs, those SLIs, those business metrics, right? So that's kind of important. Slice and dice capability, like how fast is the tool? Because when that outage happens, I don't want to run a 5-minute query to sort of find, some suspicion, or, and so the question is, how quickly will it answer these ad hoc questions for me when the problem happens? So sort of the whole triage process, as I talked about. The ability to support automation is one. The ability to, as I mentioned, to take in different types of data, traces, metrics, be able to play with logs. So all of those are sort of important aspects of it. Yeah.
Final question for you. If a customer says, I'm going to cross the bridge to the future with SignalFx, what's some of the headroom? What's some of the futures that you would expect the customer to imagine or expect down the road as observability becomes more scalable? You can imagine the metrics are going to be all over the place. A lot of unusual patterns, new apps could come in that could be hits, and new data comes in. So as you take them today in observability, what's the next to cross that bridge to the future? What's the next expectation?
I think one thing would be to expect the unexpected, because the world is changing so fast. I think you would probably be running things that you won't expect later. But a few things I would say yes. So I think the proliferation of metrics and traces is like a big trend, where we see there used to be this dependence on sort of these monoliths and APM. That sort of is transforming a little bit. There is also this concept of using data science and artificial intelligence to come to bear on this space. So that's actually an interesting trend we see, where the idea is that it's hard, because these complex systems, it's hard for humans to define exactly what they want, but if the system can help them, can help identify things, that's actually pretty fantastic. Another one that we sort of briefly touched upon is automation, or self-automated systems, where I think over the time we're going to see that platforms like ours are going to help you automate much of this in a safe manner, because these are control systems where if things can go awry, and that's not a good position to be. So these are some exciting areas where I think you will see some development.
And we've been seeing a lot of conversation around correlation and causation, and the interplay between those as these servers are being stood up, torn down, stood up, turned down. You can look at numbers all day long, but you got to know causation, correlation, they all work together.
You bet. Because I think a lot of times we naively think about this as a data problem, right? Where, I find a kink in the graph, and if I go looking, I'm probably going to find 100 different things that were sort of also correlated. Some of them may or may not be related to it. So I think a good tool is one that sort of gives you a sense, it sort of creates a boundary around the data set that it needs to look at, that is sort of relevant to your problem, and able to give you clues to causation. That you're exactly right, because again, complexity is a hard problem to deal with, and anything that we can do to sort of help you short circuit some of the pain is
And I think you're on the right track with this developer focus, because DevOps has proven that the developers want to code, build apps, and abstract away the complexity, and certainly it's complex.
That's right. It's
Arijit, thanks for coming on. Arijit Mukherji, the CTO of SignalFx, here inside the special CUBE conversation, breaking down the future of observability, where monitoring is going to the next level, certainly with cloud, impact to enterprise cloud. I'm John Furrier, here on theCUBE. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.